Making decisions alone is challenging, especially when we have community that surrounds us. We want to use the people that know us best. Jesus came alive for me at that point. He was no longer just this historical figure or like someone that I hear about. Like, he was real. All of a sudden, he was real. The Lord would make himself present to us. This is why I'm Catholic, because we have this. We have Jesus all the time. God is revealing himself to us all the time. None of this is about me. It's about God the whole time. It's not about us. We're not the center. We're not the main character. That's all you can ask.
Welcome to the Exposing Catholic Show, where we expose the lives, interactions, and stories of Catholics. Our guest today is Sister Kaitlin Morse. Welcome on.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm intrigued because you're the newest sister of Notre Dame. Is that correct?
Yes and no. So here in Chardon in the Cleveland area, yes, I am. But there's a new sister in Toledo, so with the United States, Sister Erin, and then there are new sisters all throughout the world. So yes and no.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. What's it like being just like a new sister, and actually let's talk about the fact that you're not. What's the word? Not fully.
It's not like you haven't made your final vow yet.
Final vows.
Yeah, I'm temporary professed.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really an interesting life. I've been a sister in the community for about 4.5 years now. And so it's a formation process, similar to like school or a long job prep. But it's kind of stepwise. And so you learn little by little. You kind of get more privileges, more responsibilities the whole time. And so it's definitely not easy, right? But,
yeah.
But nothing like that. Nothing like this is easy. But it's definitely an adventure. It's a lot of fun. It's a good life. It's a good life.
Yeah, it just seems like there's so much joy just like outpouring from you. Even just with the conversation we were having before the podcast. It's like, this is nice.
Yeah.
What even like got you intrigued or got you like kind of down that path? And maybe we start with the ICU story about like diving deeper into Catholicism.
Yeah. So I've been a nurse for about 8 years now. I am a cradle Catholic. Never had like an experience where I left the church per se or doubted God. It was more so going into college, kind of like a drifting away from the faith, which is unfortunately like a lot of people, right? So I became a nurse. And when I started working, my assistant head nurse and my head nurse were both Catholics. I didn't know it at the time, but the assistant head nurse actually goes to the same parish that I did. And so I didn't know her. It was a big parish and we were kind of newer there. So they helped me to rechannel like my Catholic faith, to pray, to revisit, even going to mass, simple things, right? And so it was through ministering to patients that I experienced kind of my call to religious life. My call comes from a level of like ministry and service to people. It is since multiplied, right? Like there are more things that come with it now, but it was through,
as compared to what?
Some people have an experience where they feel like a spousal union right off the bat, where they say like, "Oh, I'm marrying God," or I mostly like that. I think some of the older sisters are like that. Even there are sisters who experience their call when they're young, like in their like 5, 6, 7 years old. I think it kind of goes along that route. But for me, it was through the life of service is what really drew me to religious life.
Yeah. So what happens from there?
Yeah. So I experienced basically Tina and Joanne. They helped me kind of revisit praying, going to church, that kind of thing. And it was hard work that we were doing, right? We were watching patients die or nearing that final act of death. And it was challenging, right? Like I was 22 years old when I started doing that work, 21 actually. And I just was like, what is going on? Like it was so hard. There were so many emotions, then trying to help other people with the emotions, not to mention the things we were seeing happening. I was just like very overwhelmed all the time. And so they helped me kind of process those things and find like a healthy route to explore them. So then that's not like going back into religious life. That was just going back into the church. And so what happened was I was working one night. It was probably in like February, March, and it was the middle of the night, like probably 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. And we had a patient that was dying. And one of our rules was that no one dies alone. Not a written rule. It was just like what we did. Mm-hmm. And so it was my patient. And so they had called everyone to try and comfort this guy. Friends, family, neighbors, no one was coming. And so I kind of was watching on the monitor, and I knew that like we were getting close. And so I said to my partner, I said, I'm going to go ahead and go in the room and stay with this guy. And so I'm sitting there at his bedside. I'm not a singer by any means. And so all of a sudden I start singing to him, like singing, trying, and I'm praying, right? Like begging God to like end this man's suffering. And in that moment of singing, praying, and being with this man as he was dying, it was like everything changed in my heart. Like I knew that I was being called to something more. And so in that moment, everything changed. But then when I walked back out of the room an hour later, right, however long later, my life continued to be the same for a while. Mm-hmm. And I knew that I had this experience and that I had this invitation, but I could not handle it. So I ran from it for a long time. So that would have happened in like February, March, like I said. And it was like a full calendar year and then some that I finally was like, okay, God, like I think this is real. So I did a lot of discernment online. So I would like Google, right, religious communities, mm-hmm. and then be like, oh, that doesn't fit with me, or like, oh, that's too far from home, that kind of thing. So I did a lot of Googling. And then finally I was like, you know what, I'm going to surrender this a little bit, God. I'm going to go to spiritual direction. And I'm going to say that that's enough. Like, that's what you're asking me to do, is go to spiritual direction. So but I don't know how to get a spiritual director, right? And so I go to the parish priest and I'm like, hey, can you help me? He connects me to the vocations office for the diocese. And I am like, oh no, like, how did they know? So after this long call, kind of a lot of questions trying to match me with the right spiritual director, I was matched with a sister of Notre Dame. And so it was through that first encounter when I went to their house, like to one of our convents, one of our houses, I walked in and it was just like peace. And I just was like, shoot, like I was filled with fear, right? Like it was a scary thing. Not many people become sisters. I didn't know any sisters at the time. And so I was like, oh my gosh. So then that was a long period of running that I had. And then everything went really fast after that. Mm-hmm. So within a week of meeting my spiritual director, I went to a come and see retreat.
That's where they get you.
They got me. Yeah. They got me. And then about 5 weeks later, I started a live-in experience. So January 5th of 2020. And then we know what happens a few months later when COVID starts. And so I was working in a hospital, and the community was very gracious to me that if I would have left to go home, like I was at the end of my little live-in experience, I probably wouldn't have been able to come back, just because of where COVID was and trying to protect the sisters and everything. So they let me stay. So I've been on a live-in experience for the last 4.5 years. I literally left my house. And like, if I go back, I lived with my parents at the time. If I go back to my room right now, it looks exactly how I left it, January 5th, 2020. So it's just like, I laugh. It's an extended live-in. Mm-hmm. But it's exactly how it's supposed to be. Like it worked out exactly how it was.
What were some of those fears and like things you were worrying about?
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest fears was like what my parents would say and what my family would say. They were they're Catholic, right? They're very supportive of me, loving. I think but parents have an idea of what their kids' lives are supposed to be like, right? Mm-hmm. And so, not that I let them down, right, by not getting married and having kids, but I was worried that that's what it was like, which it's not the case at all. Thank God. So I think I was fearful of that. Also, like just telling people, because it's such a radical way of life. And so telling people like, oh, I'm a sister. Like I was fearful of that. Now I'm like, whatever, like it's okay. So it was a fear that just had to be pushed away and identified first, right? You have to identify what your fears are and then accept them before you can move on. So I think that was probably, those were the biggest ones for me. Also, I'd say like a fear of the unknown, especially because like, again, not many people are doing this. That's what I thought at the time. Now I realize that's not the case.
But how many people are doing it? Like,
Yeah.
are there big groups? Because it just seems like, I've never met a new sister or like a young sister. It always just like, they've just been a sister. Like, I have
Like,
no idea how
They
that
came
is.
out the womb. Like,
That's right. Yeah. So
We've got something special for all our Catholic organizations. Now, before you skip past this part, it's not an ad. It's more like an incredible opportunity to take your digital presence to the next level. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. Something only for our podcast listeners. We, DM Productions, have a 2-day Catholic social media makeover course. It's an online course specifically made for Catholic organizations. It will take your social media to the next level. And we make it easier than ever with our step-by-step video walkthroughs, cheat sheets, customizable templates, and more. Catholic organizations, let's start creating the quality and results that secular businesses have, but with the depth and beauty of Catholicism. Oh, and did I mention the price? $700. But remember I said I was going to let you in on a little secret? Use code DMPodcast to get it completely free. No credit card required. Just pop that code in and you're all set. Head over to www.dm.productions/social media makeover or click the link in the description. Now back to the show.
there are communities that are just like here in the United States and worldwide that are booming. So the Sisters of Notre Dame, we're located in 18 countries throughout the world. There are novitiates, so places of formation. I believe there are 3 or 4 of them around the world. In Africa, for instance, right now, we don't have room for all the sisters that we have. So
Holy
like,
crap.
yeah. So like, and same thing with India. It's huge. And so major problem here in the United States.
Wait, India, that's where the mission person was. And
yeah.
they said that there's only like 2% of the population
Yeah.
is
It's Catholic. Yeah.
Yeah.
2 or 3%.
Yeah. But vocations are booming there.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's wonderful, right? Like a great problem to have.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Like where are we going to put everyone? So then, yeah. So back to the United States though, right? Vocations numbers do appear to be down. There's some, we could say like they're going away or it's going to fade away at some point. I don't believe that's the future. I don't think our community sees that as the future. It's just shifting a little bit, maybe right sizing. But it's okay. So yeah, there are younger sisters coming, just not in droves like used to see before, right around Vatican II or even before.
Why do you think that there's less amount of like young people wanting to become a sister or like feeling the call of like that kind of life?
I think that there's a huge, there are so many opportunities today, right? Like women can do just about anything. You can do whatever job you want. If you dream it, you can do it, right? And so whereas back many years ago, there were opportunities in religious life that were not available to women otherwise. So I think that's probably one aspect of it. I think fear's another aspect of it, right? When we see institutional church shrinking like we do, then it becomes more of a fear in that sense. So my hope is that we as younger sisters can show the world that this is a life worth living, A, B, that we're not going away, right? And that it's a joyful life. Like, yeah, there's suffering in every life, in every vocation. But it's a life that is fulfilling and it blesses everyone.
Yeah, I really like that. And I mean, I've never met a nun that is unhappy. Like they always have a smile on their face. I mean, I guess in the 1950s you'd see like this stereotype of a mean nun like whacking your hand with a ruler or whatever, but I've never gotten that vibe from a nun ever.
Yeah.
I don't know, have you?
No,
That's good.
I've never been whacked before, but I know that it happened, and so I feel bad when people share stories like that, when they share their pain. And for that, I'm sorry for those people, because that's not how we want to live religious life. That's not how we're called to live religious life. But unfortunately it happened. So we have to accept that it happened and move forward, right? And try to be joyful.
Yeah.
Yeah. But don't get me wrong, we're normal people too. Like I have bad days, right? Like I get grumpy sometimes and I'm tired at times. And so maybe I don't always have a smile. I try my best though. I think all of us do. We're all trying our best, trying to give our 100% every day.
Yeah.
Do you still have a job? Like, what are you doing? Like, once you enter, is that your job?
So job, the word switches to ministry. So we would technically have jobs, like as what people would see, like what we do. So whether that's a school teacher, a nurse, social worker, yes, we have jobs, but we refer to them as ministries. So my ministry right now, I'm a full-time graduate student studying to be a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. So I don't have a job that brings in money for the community, because I'm in the process of studying for one that will do that in the next
what
few
about
years.
being a nurse? Like, when you were a nurse, then you had to like quit to join the community, or?
So our formation goes in 3 steps. And so the first step is you're a postulant. So as a postulant, you live with the community and you start taking classes and have responsibility at the house. But you also get to keep your job, keep your own finances, and kind of work as you're learning. Like you have a foot in both worlds, basically.
Okay.
And so I continued to work. I worked a little bit as a high school teacher and then a little bit as a nurse, as a bedside nurse. When you get into the second phase, which is the novitiate, then you leave work completely for 2 years. So you're not in the workforce. You're not bringing home a paycheck. Really, you'll do volunteer work more than anything. But then once you get into temporary profession, then you can begin either studies. You have to do some studies at some point, and then you'll begin ministry, a real job.
Okay.
What did you teach in high school?
I ended up teaching like basically what would be the equivalent of like life skills, emails, goal planning, schedules, that kind of stuff.
That's actually really, really helpful though. I wish they had a class like that in high school.
Yeah, it was not the job that I had, that I was contracted for. I was contracted to work with students that were having trouble attending school, and trying to get them, like, figure out what was going on and meet those needs to bring them in. And then the pandemic happened. And so we stayed online. And so we switched into this role where we were teaching a little bit of life skills. I had 40, 50 sophomores and seniors that I was like a coach, a mentor, a teacher for. And just to make sure that they were doing their work, engaged with everything. And then I taught a little bit with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that.
Yeah.
I wish.
I had no teaching experience whatsoever.
Before that?
No, I was a nurse the whole way through. And then I just made this decision. Like I knew I was entering the community. And so I was like, well, I kind of want to give this a try. And so the sisters were wonderful. They were like, yes. And so one of our sisters was the principal at the school. And so she welcomed me in. I gave it a shot. But then unfortunately the pandemic got worse again. And so I decided to leave that position to go back to be a nurse because I felt like that's where the Lord was calling me and where my skills were needed. So it was a short period there.
And what did you say you're studying now?
Psychiatric mental health nursing.
And how did your discernment look for that? And I know you were talking about or mentioned the Kentucky, like your work over there.
Yeah. So my mom might hate that I say this, but I'm going to say it anyways. When I was so my mom's also a nurse. And so definitely the one that I follow in everything. And then the one I bounce everything off of, right? Like after work, I would call her and we would talk. Even to this day, we still talk about nursing stuff. She helps me through it. And so when I was getting ready to become a nurse, she said, we were talking through like, well, what specialty do you want to do? And I said, well, like I like this and I like this. And she goes, well, you are not becoming a psych nurse. And I said, oh, like she was very clear. And so I was like, okay, Mom, yeah. It was because like we learn a lot of technical skills in nursing school. And then psych nursing is a very different side of nursing where you're not using your technical skills as much. And so fast forward then into my second year of the novitiate, which is where it's called an apostolic year. So we go out and we see different things that the sisters are doing. And then we try different things, right? We're discerning like that whole time of like, where might God be calling me to use my skills when I'm in temporary profession? So our community has long sponsored a hospital and a healthcare organization in Appalachia. So in Moorhead, Kentucky, called St. Clair Healthcare. And so when it became time for me to pick like where I was going to do this second year, I decided to go down there to do an experience. And so I spent the fall of 22 there. And I was working kind of at the hospital, but kind of like a remote position, looking at hunger because there are like really bad food disparities in Appalachia. And then I was also working at a free clinic that serves un- and underinsured individuals. So we would see mostly Amish people in the morning and then Hispanics in the afternoon. And so while I was there, I was with 2 nurse practitioners, and people would come in for, oh, I cut my hand, or, oh, I have a sore throat, or, oh, my stomach's bothering me, right? But all of them had some sort of mental health condition with it, whether it was anxiety or depression, lots of substance use, right, in Appalachia. And so I began to pray, like, if I back up a little bit, one of the things is that there are also not that many providers there. The needs way outnumber providers. And so I began to pray, and I was like, Lord, what can I do to help with this need? I was angry that the Lord said, go back to school. So I and so I knew that it was an invitation to go into the mental health side of nursing. I didn't know how I wanted to do it, whether as a nurse practitioner or into like the therapy side. So I reached out to some like friends, a professor, kind of asked for help a little bit. And that's how I went into the nurse practitioner side. But then we don't decide things on our own as sisters, right? Because we're in community. So I made the request known to, like, I made my discernment known to my novice director. She then reaches out to the superior, to our provincial superior. And we had a nice conversation with one another. I shared with her where my experience and then my discernment and kind of where I was. I had already started doing research into schools and programs as well. So like I presented like a case basically. And then she said, okay, I like that what you've done. Go ahead, pray about it a little bit more. I'll pray about it as well. And then let's touch base again. And so we set a time for like a week, 2 weeks later, whatever it was. And we meet again. And she basically says, go ahead and apply. And so I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I'll apply. And then the rest is history, right? I applied, got in. And so we continue to discern, like, even as things are ongoing, right? Like, I don't know what my ministry will be on the other end of this, just because we're not there yet, right? But the process, it's individual and communal discernment that goes on for ministry.
I feel like that's really helpful to be able to, like, not just have, like, your own thoughts and your own, like, oh, I'm having to make all these decisions. And it's just so much more helpful when you have other people that genuinely care about you and want what's best for you, their advice and their prayers and everything to, like, help you with that decision.
Absolutely. Right? Like, we don't, like, making decisions alone is challenging, right? Especially when we have community that surrounds us. We want to use the people that know us best, right? So whether it's your spouse or a good friend, maybe you have a mentor, someone that's with you through that's been with you on your journey. They help you see different perspectives, different sides of it. They even help you with different skills that you might have that you didn't know you had.
Yeah.
So it's definitely like communal is the best way to discern.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever felt like it was, I don't know, kind of restrictive? I feel like some people would be like, well, you can't make any decisions for yourself. Like, I would never want to have that kind of life. Have you ever had that sort of feeling?
I don't think so. our day-to-day life, we have a lot of, I don't want to say freedom in it, but we have a lot of choice. We have things that we have to attend to, right? Like I live in a house with other sisters, so I can't just like live my life on my own, right? Because that's not how I live my life. So that's one way that like I have to kind of be with others in it, right? Something that impacts choice. But other than that, like our days are pretty our own, but like those big decisions, right? Just like we wouldn't make a decision to move away or to, I don't think you would quit a job without talking to your spouse, right? And so,
I hope not.
yeah, definitely. So it's the same thing. It's like those big things. And then the little things, they allow us to have some ownership over, right? Within reason, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not going to be doing crazy stuff like
Yeah, like,
that.
could I take a shower today?
Yeah.
Yes, you may. Like,
My housemates definitely would be like, please, Kaitlin. Yeah.
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so what is that structure like? There's just a ton of sisters in one house, or you're talking about having multiple stories, or what is that? What is like the living situation for somebody that enters into a community, specifically like the one that you're living
The
in?
sorority sister situation, or
I was never in a sorority, so I don't know. And then
Me neither,
I've only
so-
just seen like Legally Blonde,
Yeah.
right? And so I don't think that's accurate. So I can't speak to that. So we do have a provincial center, which has like our offices and like our administrative side, right? And it also houses sisters. Ours is in Chardon here. However, there are many of us who are in Cleveland doing active ministries. And so we try to live close to where we minister, cuts down on driving, more availability, those kind of things, right? So I live with 6 other sisters in a convent. If you looked at it from the outside, you would know there's a huge Marian logo on it. You would be like, that's a convent. So we each have like our own rooms. I share a bathroom with a sister. We have housework, right, that we help out, make sure that it's taken care of. We cook meals for each other so that we have dinner together. It's just shared life, basically. And then there's just little houses like that around. Now, some sisters do live individually or like with maybe one other sister or in like an apartment complex. And that's because it's closer to their ministries and to where they are. And so we do have a little bit of movement in that sense to be by our missions. As young people in formation, though, we live in community. We won't have one of those single apartments, right? We have to learn community life. We have to be with people.
That makes sense.
There's kind of like a little family in each house.
Yeah.
Because you're like you guys sit down and eat dinner together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. Like when we were talking about when we have kids, like having a family dinner is just super, super important. That's kind of what I had in my mind when you said that.
Yeah. Definitely. Different responsibilities. Someone takes the trash out. Someone does the dishes, right? It rotates, and like people just, we don't sign up for it by any means, but you just pitch in, right? You do family stuff. We celebrate birthdays together. We have faith sharing together. So that's like where we'll have like a special time once a month to talk more in depth about our faith. We pray together, obviously. Duh. But yeah, it's a family. Like we celebrated a sister's birthday not long ago, and her family was throwing a party. And so they invited all of us. So there we are, like at this like birthday party with like our extended family. Because you hear about like when you tell stories, right? Like I have a family at home, right? And so I tell stories about my family. They know my family. Same thing. Like other people have stories that they tell. But then when we get to like be with like each other's family, it's like, oh yeah, that's like my mom, right? Or like that's like my other brother. They become like your own, like it's just an extended family.
Oh, that is so sweet.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Do you guys do like morning prayer? We were in PA filming at it wasn't a convent, but it was a school that a bunch of sisters lived at, and they did morning prayer in the chapel, like a set type of thing.
Yeah. So at the house that I live in now, we do not pray morning prayer together. we have very active ministries amongst the people with different schedules. And so we would be praying at like probably 5 o'clock in the morning, which is God's not awake then. Totally kidding. God is awake all the time. No, so we don't pray morning prayer together. We pray that on our own. Our evenings are our time for community. So we eat dinner together, have like our like conversations and that kind of stuff. Then we have evening prayer together, and then like our recreation kind of hangout time. So that's our commitment with each other. But every house is different. So there are some sisters, and some sisters also desire that. And so I know one of our sisters was away studying, and she missed communal prayer. So different sisters would take turns praying with her. So they would just call each other up. We have a common prayer book, and they would just pray morning prayer together. Like someone had Monday, someone had Tuesday, someone had Wednesday. And that was kind of one way that they helped meet her desire of prayer.
I love that so much. Like you always have let me get my words together. You're in it with each other, and you're like doing it as a family. And like, it's just really sweet. Like a sibling kind of thing, but in a different, I don't know how to explain it. At a different
Spiritual
level.
sibling.
Yeah.
Because like, the reality is like most of the sisters are fairly older than me, right? And so it kind of changes like the sister to sister versus it would be like a mother grandmother.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like there are sisters that like I couldn't even tell you how old they are because they don't act like their age, right? Because they're physically active still, right? They're mentally with it. They're spiritually like on fire. And so you're like, I don't know how old you are. One of the things, my grandma died while I was in formation, like a few years ago. And in the process of it, she was dying at home. One of the sisters that I lived with came and stayed with us. So like I was never alone, kind of what you just said about like not being alone. Like there was someone with me to go through it. And then every night when I would go home to the convent, they would ask me, they would check on me, they would make sure I was getting texts constantly. And then when it came time for the funeral, there were sisters from all over that came. And I remember turning around and I was like, whoa, like I'm not even, I think I would have been a postulant preparing to be a novice. And so I wasn't a sister yet. I was still just Kaitlin. I hadn't taken any made any formal promises or anything like that. Still kind of like outside, right? And people were showing up and supporting me in a way that I had never been supported before. Yeah. And I was like, whoa. And then it continues, right? Like into other things. They ask how your day's going, or, hey, I know that you have this going on. Or I meet with a lot of young people to talk about discernment, religious life. And so there's one sister that she asks me to just tell her the time that we're meeting. And then she sets a reminder in her phone. When the alarm goes off, she prays. So like there's someone praying for me in that moment as I'm ministering. And so it's like where else do you get that? Yeah. Like it's the best team ever.
Do you feel like you're best friends, or is it more of like I don't know. Because the age thing, it's like, okay, there's nobody else my age. Like I'm going to be kind of less relatable to them. Like, do you feel that way at all? Or is it just always close and age doesn't really matter? Because like you were saying, you don't even know how old some of them are because they're just on fire. Yeah. I feel like best friend is hard to, it's like different. Like our friendships they're different. They're right based on the spirit. Like we say this a lot, like the only thing that brought us together is God. Because like even the age gap alone, like why else would we be hanging out, right? Do you hang out with a bunch of 70-year-olds every night? Like no. So that alone, right? Or like I look at some of the sisters in like California, right? Like why would I why would I have any sort of commonality with them? So it's kind of like a different level of friendship in that regard. But still we're like just like being normal people, right? Like sometimes we don't see eye to eye. Yeah. Like we don't always agree on things. Maybe we want to handle something a little differently, or like, hey, someone loads the dishwasher differently than me.
you learn to let go of a lot of things in community life. But there's, even if they're not your best friends, there's always a friend there for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's really sweet.
Do sisters use TikTok?
In our community, I don't know that anyone uses TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
I know other communities do. Don't get me wrong, like I have social media and like I consume stuff, but not necessarily TikTok. No, not doing any TikTok dances or anything like that. Yeah.
We should start that up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey.
Sister Kaitlin will be our first one doing it.
Yeah.
Sure. You just gotta show me what to do, and then probably be a lot of outtakes.
Okay, we'll do the TikTok dance right after the horse riding.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. We got a list of things.
Yes.
Completely switching subjects, I think, because that was random. What does Jesus mean to you in the Eucharist?
Yeah. Wow. The Eucharist. Right. We have all these ideas of these wonderful ideas. I don't want to make it come off like I'm like downplaying them, right? Like the source and summit, like the central part of our faith. I made a 30-day retreat. Part of our formation is to make 30 days of silence. We do the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius. And so before that, right, like I prayed and I went to church and I received the Eucharist and I was like, yeah, this is great. I didn't know what was happening, right? Like I was kind of oblivious. I just was following, right? Like what I was supposed to do. But it was during that 30-day retreat that I came to know the person of Jesus. And so it's a long retreat. Obviously 30 days
of silence, like you don't talk.
You have a spiritual director that you talk to for maybe an hour, but that's it.
Like an hour for the whole 30 days, or like
an hour a day.
Okay.
An hour a day. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of like some things that happen before, but then you're praying with the scriptures. And so you're meeting Jesus face to face. You're putting yourself into these passages and into these stories. And so Jesus came alive for me at that point, right? He was no longer just this historical figure or like someone that I hear about. Like he was real. All of a sudden he was real. And then to go to mass and to have Jesus present there, I was like, whoa. And so from the time I started making the retreat till now, like literally during mass, like I could cry at any moment, like especially during the consecration, like I could cry. So a lot of times I'm trying to like hold it in, like actively hold it in, because they'll be like, it's daily mass on a Tuesday. Why is this woman crying? Right? Like, but it's like so beautiful, right? Like that, like the Lord would make himself present to us all the time. Like, wow.
Yeah.
Like we're so lucky in that regard. And then like when I think back to when I was not practicing the faith, right? When I kind of drifted, I would go to church with other friends. Like I would go to their churches, non-Catholics, but Christian. And one time I was offered their version of the Eucharist. And it was basically like passing a loaf of bread around and like ripping a hunk off. And I just was like, this is not right. Like I knew in my heart it was not right. And I didn't take it because I was like, this isn't it. And now then years later, I have this experience, right, of like just Jesus being alive for us. And I'm like, whoa, like this is it. Like this is why I'm Catholic, because we have this, right? We have Jesus all the time.
Yeah.
And then to be able to receive him into us and to become like little tabernacles ourselves. Like that's one of my favorite like images I had from retreat was like, right, we know like the golden monster, like a golden tabernacle that we have at our churches. But then think about it like as yourself being that tabernacle, right? Of being gold. Like it's whether it's your heart or like kind of your soul, right? That you're gold and like you're holding Jesus in you. But then it's not that like we just hold Jesus in us and like pass him back like, hey, I'm done, your turn, right? Like it's not like that. It's we allow Jesus to infiltrate our being, right? Like take over. Like when I minister, like it's not me ministering. Like I'm there with Jesus, meeting people, right? Trying to get people back to him.
Yeah.
It's not about me. right? It's about God the whole time. And so, yeah, the Eucharist is such a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I'm probably gonna like butcher this story because I haven't told it in so long, but the first time that I like truly understand and truly felt Jesus's presence in the Eucharist, I'm a cradle Catholic, and this was after I graduated high school. It was 2021, and I went on the Life Teen Leadership Conference retreat, and there's kids from all over the country that come to this. And it's during adoration. They had 2 adorations. One was a silent adoration, and one they had like with worship. And it just so happened that my church, like, there was only 5 girls, and they put us in the front row for the whole conference. So I was like not distracted at all, like just right up there.
Yeah, front row is the best.
And I never liked that. Like, I'm a backseat church person. I used to be, now not so much anymore. But like, I was like, holy crap, like, no, I am right there. Like, no thank you. But it was during adoration, and everyone is just like worshiping Jesus, and after all these amazing speakers were just like telling me right to my face like, this is Jesus and everything, and it just like something clicked in me. They put the priest like in the middle of this giant room. I guess there's hundreds of people in it, and everybody's like facing inwards, and he's just holding Jesus right like high in the air, and like everybody is singing, and it sounds like what I would imagine heaven sounding like, and I just like could not stop crying. It was the most beautiful thing ever. And I was like, that's Jesus, like that is really him. And then we went to mass, and I was like, that's him, like right there. And I'm eating, like, this is crazy. And like ever since then, like I've had Protestant friends like try and kind of convince me out of my Catholic faith. And I'm like, I can't, like, I know what I believe is true. Like, I felt it, and like he's there.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
yeah,
I might not know everything about the Catholic faith, but I know that.
Yeah.
And like, I just, yeah, that is something that will always stay with me, even when like my faith is a little shaky and I feel like I'm in a season of drought. Like, he's always there. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
Got a little emotional.
It's okay. It happens.
Let the tears fly.
Yeah. It's the gift of tears. It's real. One of the things that you were like, once you know, you know. And so there's this, one of like our therapy mindsets is like, once you become aware of something, you can't be unaware of it. So like, now that you've had that encounter, right? You can't like, minus like if you had like a really bad concussion or something, maybe, but even then you're gonna like, your being knows, right? And so once you know, you know.
Yeah.
Like, how cool is that? But that's beautiful, that experience. And I think especially like as we're in this Eucharistic revival, that like people are getting that experience now. And I think that's also like going back to vocations, like that ties into it, right? Because we see young men, I shouldn't say young, because there's also, you can come to the priesthood at any time, right? But
Late vocation.
Yeah. So men wanting to lay down their lives to help bring Jesus to people, right? Then you have women who are falling in love with that same Jesus, right? And it all is part of vocation. And then even marriage, right? Like people, when they want to commit their lives to living a full Catholic life, and then to be married, have kids, and then bring those kids up in the faith, like every vocation is touched by the Eucharist, right?
Yeah, it's so important for us. And like, it was really, really, really sweet because we got trained to be Eucharistic ministers right before our wedding. So we were Eucharistic ministers at our wedding, and that was the first time we were able to do that. So it was just really, really special for us.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I really, really hope I don't get wine on my dress, though. I didn't, but it was just very sweet.
Blood. But yeah.
Well, before that, I'm very clumsy. So that was a worry, but we're all good.
No, definitely, that's a fear for me. Like, I get, like, there's a song that talks about like trembling hands, like receive with trembling hands. I can't be a Eucharistic minister anymore because I tremble, right? Like because I'm
Oh
like
my gosh.
literally shaking. And so it stinks at the same time, right? Because like I can't help, like I can't bring Jesus. But at the same time, I'm like, wow, like that's Jesus, right? Like it's like kind of like one of those. It's okay.
Yeah, it is blood. I was like messed up in my mind,
No,
but
that's okay.
It's okay.
No, I relate with the trembling hands thing though, because like I started noticing my stuff. I was like, geez, like calm down. we gotta make sure we're not dropping. That is a huge fear.
Yeah.
Like, please, like, please do not drop it. Don't spill it. Like, don't do any of that stuff. But what you were talking about with the, just like that it's Jesus is. Sometimes I think, wow, I wish I could have like see a little like sign or like see some cool thing happen when they're doing the consecration or whatever. And then of course I always get like kicked with the Holy Spirit, and they're like, you don't actually need one, like, which blows because like I wish I could. It's like, come on, I'd like to see one, but at the core, like, I do know, so, like, I don't need one, but come on, please.
well, yeah, it's not like there was a flashing light in the middle of the room or anything, but it was just something that clicked in my heart and in my mind that was just like, this has been true the whole time. Like, now you're able to see it. Like, yeah. So, I know you love the Eucharistic miracles. I love those too. It's sick.
That's what I'm talking about. Just a little something. It's nothing cool. But either way, it's cool in general.
I think they're happening. I think that they do happen around us more than we know. Like one time we were talking, I help out a little bit with confirmation prep. And so there's a team of us, probably like 10 adults together. And we were talking to the kids about teens about miracles, right? And so after it all ends, we're standing together and just like not really calmly because she was so excited. One of the adults was like, yeah, there was a Eucharistic miracle here at St. Barnabas. And I was like, excuse me, what? But then it was already like late. And she's like, I'll tell you the story another day. I still haven't heard it yet, but apparently there was one.
Gosh.
So I think like there's all the time God is revealing himself to us, right? All the time. And often it's us that are the ones missing it. So I'm not saying that you've missed it, right? Like haven't missed it.
No,
but
sure.
maybe God will give you a Eucharistic miracle.
I need like one that's really obvious. I don't notice them until later, like when I was discerning about proposing and stuff and praying about it. Then I realized that on our third date, we went to church, and then I've been going to the same church for like 10 years. Never been asked to bring up the gifts, but the first time that we went, they asked us to bring up the gifts. So it's like a foreshadowing of us walking up the aisle together on the wedding day. So I think I get them. Just a little late to the party.
It's okay. It's okay. Some of us are more stubborn than others. Might need a little.
Can't relate.
They say like Saint Ignatius, for instance, like he needed a cannonball, right? Like that's how his conversion started. Was a cannonball that
really
hit his leg?
I did not know that.
Yeah. So he was like a soldier. Sorry to all my Jesuit friends that I'm gonna butcher this story, but he was a soldier, just a normal guy, right? Ends up having this cannonball destroy his leg. So he's in bed for months, and they gave it, like, as he's like recuperating, they gave him, I think it was like the Lives of the Saints. And then maybe there was another book. I don't remember. Maybe it was the Bible. I don't know. But he has this conversion, and it's all because a cannonball took out his leg. Like, okay, I don't think I need a cannonball, God. Like, let's not
we don't need to go that far. Yeah.
But yeah, like, and then you look at what, like, not only what the society has done for the world, right? And like the exercises, but then also like how many, like, you look at like the different priests, well, now they're saints, who spread the gospel, who baptized, like Francis Xavier baptized so many people, right? Peter Claver, same thing, so many people. And so it's like, whoa, all because of one cannonball. Don't throw a cannonball, like, let's not. Sorry, God, no cannonballs here.
Did not having to wear a habit influence your decision on joining the sisters?
No.
Okay.
When I was being asked all those questions, like trying to get the spiritual director, they were also asking me questions, trying to like figure out religious life at the same time. And they asked me that question about a habit. And I said, I'm open to whatever it is. Like, it's the community that you fall in love with, like that you're called to. It's not the habit, right? Yeah, habits, they're beautiful, right? But you're still a person underneath it, right? Like, I like clothes, but I'm not like in love with clothes, right? Like, same thing, like I like the habit, but I'm not in love with it. And so if the habit becomes like our measure of religious life, we have missed the mark completely. And so it was falling in love with the right community. Well, not even falling in love. It was just getting to the right community and experiencing it. And then similar to like when you guys probably knew that she was the one, right? Like that was what it was like for me. I knew that the Notre Dames were the one. Yeah.
Did
habit or
you
not.
visit any other religious communities before?
I had become really good friends with the Ursulines in Cleveland, but never had really considered entering there. During my Google discernment and my vocation, like via Google, no, I never went to visit anywhere else. I was able to like kind of not eliminate people, but like eliminate communities, because I knew like at the time, like I was a nurse, right? So like a full-on teaching community was not for me because I would have been miserable. Like my gift comes through nursing. Like that's why I'm in it, is because God invited me into it. So yeah, I did like I did look at a few, but never visited really seriously.
Got it.
Yeah, I find the habit very interesting because it's like I don't know that you're a sister just by looking at you.
Yeah.
But if somebody wore a habit, I'd be like, okay, that's a sister or a nun or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And Sister Michelle's like the first one to not wear the habit.
Yeah.
Which is like, what? That's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know. And since I know her from going to school there. So.
Yeah. So after Vatican II, they asked us to do two things, to like go back to our roots and to our founding. They meaning like the church, right? Like the institutional church. They asked religious communities to go back to your founding. And then also the second part of it was to like be one with, like, to get closer to the people. And so that's why our community is in street clothes in the United States, so that we're closer to the people. You look at the ministries we do, right? So like whether like the sisters are at the border, or we're doing like spiritual ministry with young adults, or the Labra ministry, right? Like we're with the people, right? Like we're right there with them. And so it allows us to get closer. That's what I see it as, that I can get so close to people. Because unfortunately, like we talked about earlier with the rulers and stuff, people have been hurt, not only by sisters, but by the church.
Yeah.
And so when people see a sister, sometimes it's not a positive embrace. And it's not that I want to like fool people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I can come in a different way. Like I can go in like kind of maybe a side door or like through a window, whereas like it's a little gentler for people. But we do wear signs that like make us like sort of visible, right? Like I have a crucifix that's specific to our community.
What specifically about that one?
Yeah, so the actual design was made specifically for the Sisters of Notre Dame. So like there's special, like the hands they extend outside the border of the cross, right? Because we're supposed to like kind of go outside of what we have. There's a special Holy Spirit. You can see the dove descending right at the top. There's a wound on the side, like a drop of blood coming off the side, right? Because of like part of our mission. And then the back of it, right, has a special Notre Dame logo on it. So that's kind of like our crucifix. And then we have our ring as well, which it looks like just a plain silver ring. But those are our signs that we're sisters and we're consecrated to the Lord.
Does every like different community have a specific crucifix? Or like, I don't know. I've never heard of like having a specific one before. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Everyone has something a little bit different. Like I know the Dominicans, right? Black and white are like their like primary colors. And so I've seen a cross that kind of has like black and white alternating on it. Some communities might not even have one, right? Like a community that has a habit per se, like a real clothing habit, like they might not necessarily have a cross with their
that makes sense.
I don't know all the communities, like there are a lot, so I'm not
Come
sure.
on, you should know this.
Man, no.
Didn't know it was going to be a test.
Failed.
No, but like we were at that Catholic museum and they
Yeah.
had a bunch of different communities and all their habits.
We're so
they
different.
had similar things,
Mhm.
but were also super different at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how, like, the habit, like, part of it, right, is an outward sign, but it also makes everyone the same, right? And so I kind of get that, like, that they would all look similar, right?
It was just like, okay, that's some sort of like sister's clothing or something.
Yeah. Even, like, it's funny, like, I'll still get messages, like, just the other day, like, I got a text from one of my aunts that had, like, a picture of a sister in it, and she's like, we found this at grandma's house, like, is this one of your sisters? And so then, like, I show the picture to another sister, and she's like, oh no, like, the headpiece is a little different than what ours was. Or like they'll be like, so I got like a location and a year, and she's like, oh, we weren't there that year. And so it's like, oh, okay, like, thank you. So yeah, the habit is definitely a defining piece, but also it can be a divide for people.
What is like a reaction that you get when somebody that doesn't know that you're a sister finds out that you're a sister?
Oftentimes, people will say, you don't look like a sister. I usually take that as, wow, you look really young, which I like that, right? I think because it's such like a foreign idea, right? Like that's what I tried to put it back to, right? Like, it's not that I don't look like a sister, but then at the same time, it's like, well, what does a sister look like, right? Like, there's no cookie cutter sister, right? All of us
hunched over, wearing black and white.
there you go. Yeah. Okay.
Breaking the stereotype.
You offended me. Yeah, but it's like, what, like, no two sisters are alike. Even if they wear the same exact clothes, they're not alike. They they encounter God differently. They came to religious life differently. They have different ministry, different gifts, right? And so it's like, how can we channel our individual in the midst of a community, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah. I feel like, I don't know what my reaction would have been. Like, oh, I didn't know you were a sister. Like, that's really cool. But for some people, like you were saying, like, you can kind of sneak into a window, kind of cat burglar-esque.
Yeah.
But, if they were to be, like, kind of put off by, like, just somebody that they were having in their mind is, like, a typical nun, I guess.
Yeah.
And then you just being, like, kind and gentle and, through your ministry and something like that, and them finding out, like, oh, she's a sister? I didn't know that. Like, that kind of makes me rethink about what I had I don't know what my words are. It kind of makes me rethink about what I think about nuns. That was a weird sentence, but does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, like, none of this is about me, right? It's about God the whole time, right? From the ministry I do to the life and community to what I say, like, it's about God, right? I think all of us are supposed to be, as Catholics, right? It's not about us. We're not the center. We're not the main character, right? We should always constantly be pointing to God, right? Pointing to the triune God, right? And so it makes me sad if people get stuck at the level of, well, you don't look like a sister, and then they shut me off. That would make me sad, because it's not sad because it's about me. It's sad because then they don't get to see God and the Spirit and Jesus working. Yeah. Right. They don't get to have that encounter. But it's okay. Like, it happens, and I understand. And, like, everything happens in God's time. Right. And it's okay. Right. Like, I think the minute that I make it about me is when, like, we have a major problem on our hands. And so I hope I never do that. And if I have, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, God, for that. But yeah, it's okay. Like, it's okay. It's even if people encounter me and they're like, oh, I didn't know you were a sister, or you don't look like a sister, or you're not real because you don't wear a habit. Hopefully I can help to expand their mind a little bit, right? We know our God is expansive. And so if I can help to expand their mind a little bit, then that's good. Yeah. Maybe the next time they encounter me, it'll be a little different. So it's okay.
What advice would you give to somebody discerning joining a community?
Definitely, I think it'd be like two, like I'm going to give two answers.
Okay.
The first one would be to be bold, right? The devil hates when we're bold. The devil loves when we like cower or second guess ourselves, turn away, make no decision, right? That's what the devil loves.
Spiritual sloth.
There you go. Yeah.
I was going to say slaw, but that didn't make any sense.
Spiritual coleslaw. Right. So be bold, right? Take action, right? I'm not saying make final vows. I'm not saying sell everything you have, right? But take a step, right? If the first thing if it crossed your mind, right? Talk to someone about it, right? Whether that's a friend or a sister or maybe a parish priest, say something, right? Bring someone, just like we talked about communal discernment, right? Bring someone into that with you. Likewise, right? You're not called, like, I'm not called to final vows today. Like, as a temporary professed sister, I renew my vows every year. And so I'm just called to reassess at the end of that year to see if I'm being called to another set, right? For another year. Eventually I'll be called to final vows, like to discern that, but I'm not there right now. And so it's the same thing. Look at what the step is in front of you. So if it's talking to someone, if it's visiting, doing a come and see retreat, if it's maybe something more serious, right? Like, hey, like maybe I would like to ask for the application. Maybe I want to think about what it would look like to maybe leave my job or something along those lines, right? So be bold. I feel like I forgot my second thought, right? It's okay. It happens. I could probably make up one really quick on the top of my head.
Or if you want to stick with one, that's fine.
Yeah, I feel like just be bold.
Okay.
Right. There's no way to do it wrong. Maybe the only way to do it wrong is to not do it, right? To let the devil win and to be filled with fear.
Yeah.
That might be the only way. But as long as you're taking steps and open to it, right? Like if that's where you feel like the Lord nudging, you can't go wrong, right? Good discernment is in or out, right? You're discerning something and then making a decision. And so as long as you've discerned it well, it might be that you're not called to religious life. And that's okay. You discerned it and you did it well. That's all you can ask.
Yeah, I forget which priest said it, but they were talking about it's not a problem of there's not enough people becoming priests or not enough people becoming sisters or nuns. It's that it feels like there's not enough people leaving those things. So like going in and then leaving because they feel like as soon as they go into seminary, they have to be a priest versus discerning it, going in, and then being like, okay, this is not for me. But there would be so many more additional priests and sisters if they would just take the step.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look at even like we ask kids like when they're like freshmen in college, like, well, even like seniors in high school, well, what are you going to study? What do you want to do? Right? Like, so we're already setting kids up that like you have to know with certainty what you're going to do. And it's like even like your programs of study set you so specialized, right? And where's that room for testing things out, right? Trying. I think it doesn't hurt anyone to discern religious life. Like, it doesn't hurt to ask God, like, is this what you're inviting me to? It can only draw positive, right? Like, it can only bring about good.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it was Ron that might have said that. I'm not sure. But another thing that he said, he was talking about guys entering the seminary and how he's like, when people that are just dating and then somebody comes up to them and is like, so when you get married, like, hold on, like, we're testing this out first. Like, I like her, but I mean, I could see us getting married in the future, but we're kind of getting to know each other first. So it's the same thing for religious life and to become a priest as well.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Right. Like, oh my gosh, that'd be crazy if you were like, yeah, I'm going to get married that one. It's like, hello.
But some
Pump the
people
brakes.
do know though. Like, there's that as well. But it's not like you need that in order to move to the next step.
Well, and there's a difference between inviting someone to consider, right, a vocation to the priesthood or to religious life, or to even like, hey, could this be your spouse? There's a difference between inviting and pressuring. Because I think that's the unfortunate thing is that there's such a delicate balance, right, with even that statement of like, you would be a great priest, right? Like, ooh, that could be a little pressuring for someone.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so it's not that I don't want people to say stuff like that. Like, if you notice someone that has those characteristics that would make a good priest or make a good religious, then yeah, encourage them. But know the person that you're talking to, right? And encounter them in that right way.
Yeah.
In that supportive way, in order to make it an invitation as opposed to like the pressure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Did you have anything else?
No, that's it. This was great.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, yeah. I love to talk about God. I love to talk about vocations.
Mhm.
It's a good life.
Where can people find you if they want to like just follow your ministry, follow different things?
Yeah, so we're located on like the major social media platforms, the Sisters of Notre Dame. We have a website that people can find us. Sisters of Notre Dame Vocations would be an option. Different things along those lines.
Sweet. Thank you.